Welcome to r/Pettyrevenge, where OP gets revenge against thieving squatters. Our next Reddit post is from Silver Tent. I live in a rural area about 100 kilometers away from the nearest city. My town has about 200 people. There's no shops, and the nearest shop is 20 kilometers away. I live with my partner, and we don't have kids. 4 other couples, who are our besties, decided that we should all go on a 4-wheel drive camping holiday together to the top of Australia on Cape York Peninsula. We organized our annual holidays to coincide together, and we'd be away for just under 4 weeks. My neighbor also joined us, but his wife doesn't like camping or 4-wheel driving, so she stayed at home. About 2 weeks into our trip, we're camping rough just alongside rivers, creeks, or near the beach as we very slowly meandered our way up to the tip of Australia, doing lots of fishing and swimming in waterfalls, etc. We rarely pass through towns, and therefore have no phone reception most of the time. As we near the top, there's a town about an hour from the tip, and we call in there to fuel up, get some supplies, etc. And our phones start beeping madly with numerous missed calls, text messages, messenger, etc. because we finally have phone reception again. My neighbor's wife left many messages saying that someone had moved into my house. A man, a woman, and a small child. She did ask what they were doing, and they said that they were friends of the owner, but they couldn't say the name of the owner, me. I contacted the cops, who's also a friend of mine, and he said that he would investigate. The following day, I returned to the fuel station, which had phone reception, about 1 hour away from our campsite. And the sergeant told me he went to my house, and there were indeed 2 adults and 1 child now living in my house. They were unloading a trailer with furniture when he arrived. The male told the sergeant that he had a rental agreement with me, but upon being asked for the rental contract, became defensive and said the issue was between them and me as a civil matter, and the police had no power to investigate. He also stated that, if pushed, he would claim squatters' rights. The police left. The sergeant told me that he couldn't remove them, as it was a civil matter, even though I said they must have broken into the house to gain entry. He apologized and said that his hands were tied, so to speak. He warned me to be careful, because if we forced them out, they could sue us for a variety of things, including assault. So be mindful of how we handle this. He said that he was aware this sort of thing had been occurring, where squatters either prop somewhere until a court orders them out, thus getting 6 to 12 months of free accommodation, or alternatively being forced out and suing for damages to get money. I returned to the campsite and told my friends. We spent the next 6 hours talking about how to deal with it, from dragging them out and throwing them into the road to taking them to court. Going to court would take months, probably 6 to 12 months, so that wasn't an option. We did, however, finally decide on a course of action. The following day, I contacted my police friend and asked him what he thought of our plan, and he agreed that it was a good decision. In fact, he often wonders why others didn't do the same thing. But he reiterated that he could never advise anyone to actually take this course of action. And he was very specific when he said that we must adhere to this plan as I described it on the phone. Don't get impatient and deviate to make it happen quicker. Stick to the plan. My neighbor's wife said that they weren't damaging or stealing anything yet, so we decided not to return immediately. We continued on our holiday, sort of, but we did decide to return 4 days early to enact our plan. So that meant that we only had 2 more days left at the top before making our way back down south. So finally, we arrived back home, but instead of going to my house, we all go straight to my neighbor's house and pull up there. Now, this slightly spooked the squatters, as usually you don't see too many vehicles in our road, and not 5 vehicles altogether. We knew they had come outside of my house and were watching us, but we paid them no attention, and after an hour, they seemed to have fallen into a false sense of security and went back inside. We all set up tents on my neighbor's property, which was about 100 meters away from mine. His property was slightly elevated, so we picked a good spot where we could watch them constantly without being too obvious. The next day, the squatters did nothing and stayed at the house. The following day, they did the same. Now, this was concerning, as our plan could only happen if they left in their car. The 3rd morning, we saw the male leave on his own, and about 30 minutes later, he came back. We think he might have been testing the water, so to speak, to see if we went over to the property. But we didn't, because we realized the female and the kid were still inside. Then, at about 11 a.m., they all got into their car and drove off. One of our friends discreetly followed them, and he was calling us every 15 minutes to update us on where they were going. After they drove past the shop 20 minutes away, we presumed they were driving into a major town to shop, some 3 to 4 hours away. We then went over to my place and removed all their property, taking it out onto the road adjacent to the fence and dumped it there. I then got a massive big industrial chain that I have in the shed and secured it between the posts of my driveway. The rest of the property is fenced from the road. Our friend who was following them called us and said that they had just hired a trailer, and we wondered if they had decided to move out, and perhaps we acted too quickly. But inevitably, we decided that we made the right choice. An hour later, the friend who was following them advised us that they were at some other house and loading furniture from that house into the trailer. He thinks they may have been relatives or friends they were previously living there with, as they seem familiar with each other, hugging as they bid their farewells. So they were coming back to my house with more furniture. We took this opportunity to relocate all their possessions further down the road, away from my driveway and any possible conflict when they return. I borrowed my neighbor's tractor, scooped all their stuff onto the bucket of the tractor, and dumped it 100 meters further down the road. Then, I parked the tractor just in front of the chain across the driveway with the bucket facing the road, really blocking access to my property now. My neighbor said that if they tried to enter with their vehicle, then his tractor was there to let them know that he would pick up their car and flip it back into the road. They arrived an hour later. They stopped at their pile of possessions out on the road, and the male stormed up the driveway where all 11 of us were waiting for him. This idiot tried to claim that he had an agreement with the owner until I told him I was the owner. Then he said that they had squatters' right, and we had a really big verbal argument to which he ended up stating that we acted unlawfully and he was getting the police to ensure that he could get back onto my property. Sure enough, the police did arrive, and it was my sergeant friend who didn't pay too much attention to this guy's rantings. The sergeant just flipped the whole scenario back onto the squatters by saying, "Maybe while you were away, these people have squatted where you claim to live, and as such, it's a civil matter. Take it up with the courts. But you can't go onto this property because OP is now in possession of it, so pack up all your stuff on the side of the road and leave." The squatter tried to have me charged with throwing all his stuff out of the house onto the road, but the police asked if he had proof that I did it, like video or pictures. His woman then falsely claimed that she had seen me do it and wanted to make a statement to that effect. This is when my friend stepped up and advised the sergeant that he had followed the squatters all day and he had them on his dash cam. The sergeant asked the woman what time she witnessed this, and she said just after lunchtime. To which my friend queued up a video of that time and advised her that he had just seen a video of her in a shopping center car park 100 kilometers away at that time. And at this point, the cop wouldn't believe anything she said. He said, "Alternatively, you can make a statement and I'll charge you with lying under oath." They left. A week later, I spoke to the sergeant who told me he followed them around town for 30 minutes while they seemed to be scoping out other places to move into. After they saw the cops following them everywhere, they drove back to the bigger regional town. However, to hurry them along out of town, the sergeant pulled them over and gave them a traffic ticket for overloading their trailer as it now had twice as much junk in it. So, my advice if you have squatters is to wait until they all leave for shopping or whatever and retake possession of your property. It's a lot quicker and cheaper than court. From now on, when we go away on holidays, we're getting friends to house sit. Our next Reddit post is from Pixel Detox. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I live in a 50-floor high-rise building in downtown Vancouver. I just got back from a sweet sunset run. A family entered the building with me and held the door for me. They were speaking French together, but I thanked them in English, which is the main language here in British Columbia. We all walked towards the elevators and all ended up in the same elevator. It was a couple and their 3 kids, all boys around 8 to 10 years old. I'm bad with ages, but they were the age of being able to speak and think enough to understand what's right and wrong. They were chatting in French, and since it's my mother tongue, I could understand everything they were saying. As we were going up 30 floors, the dad turned to his kid and asked, "Alors, elle est belle ou pas belle?" So, is she pretty or not pretty? My brain suddenly froze, thinking, could he be speaking about me? One of the kids quickly responded, "Pas belle," meaning not pretty. I stopped breathing for a second, realizing now fully that it was truly me they were blatantly judging right in front of me. I froze, sadly. That's mostly how I react when situations are just unbelievable. With just a few floors left before I could escape the awkwardness, I had a choice to make. Let it go, nope, or seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for perfect linguistic revenge. I'm not the confrontational type, but I couldn't let this slide. I wasn't the one deserving to feel awkward in this elevator. I kept my cool though, and as I exited the elevator, I turned back and said with the most sassy French accent I could give, "Bonne soirée," which means have a good evening. The look on their faces, absolutely priceless. I left quickly, but in hindsight, I wish I'd made direct eye contact until the doors closed. The mom stood there silently the whole time, almost like she wasn't really present. I couldn't help but wonder if she faces this kind of behavior from him too. Our next Reddit post is from Diligent Cheerio. So I was married to a very manly man for 17 years. I ended up doing all the admin tasks and mental load tasks. He had a money-earning job, and I did everything else. I even scheduled this man's dental appointments and buy his parents' birthday cards. I'm sure after I left him, he was unpleasantly surprised to discover how much work his assistant did. Anyways, it's been 5 years. We have our own lives, and I don't think about him much, and we certainly don't talk. But one day, I start getting calls from him. He explains to me that he never removed me from his home and auto insurance and says, "They won't remove you unless you call." He's pissy and keeps calling me and saying I have to do this right away, and he's being very rude. Like, it's been 5 years, and now it's an emergency? Okay. He ends up calling me every day for a week and saying I've created a problem for him. I called the company and the woman on the phone says, "No, we totally would have removed you. He just never asked. I can see there's no record of him calling ever." Oh, really? She then says, moving him from married to a single man, this is going to raise his rate considerably. Is he sure this is important to him? I laughed. Oh yes, very important. In fact, I haven't lived there for 5 years, so his current policy should really be backdated. She laughs and says, "Yeah, he's gonna get a large bill. Not my problem anymore." Our next Reddit post is from Brighter Love. My sister-in-law lives the high life. She's a paralegal sitting on a fat trust fund, while my brother-in-law proudly brags about scamming his military disability benefits to pay for their mortgage. They're rolling in money. We're talking 8 cars, including a Land Rover, Porsche, and Tesla, living in prime Seattle real estate. Every holiday, my sister-in-law struts around with her latest designer bags from Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Yves Saint Laurent. With gift giving, I pour my heart into holiday gifts and start my shopping in August. I'm talking Anthropologie advent calendars, Nordstrom purses, and luxury beauty products for the ladies, plus cozy knits and golf gear for the guys. I always have a theme. This year was travel, and I follow one rule. If I wouldn't love receiving it myself, I don't give it. For 5 years, since her baby shower, I haven't received a single thank you note from my sister-in-law. I even started gifting her thank you cards set with stamps. Subtle, right? She never got the hint. Meanwhile, their kids get showered with luxury toys, handcrafted wooden pieces, and Lego sets from us. Still no thank you. What we get in return is literal garbage. I'm not exaggerating. They give us Goodwill rejects, puzzles with missing pieces, and junky Disney knickknacks. Remember, these people own multiple luxury cars and designer bags. Enter their spoiled nephew, my perfect accomplice. Each year, my mission became clear. Find the loudest, most obnoxious, yet irresistibly cool toy possible. This summer, I struck gold at an outdoor market. Pop guns that make the most incredible rackets. So we skipped the holidays this year, but we got the full report from Grandma. The pop gun was such a hit that it became an issue. My nephew was so obsessed that he wouldn't put it down. My sister-in-law's parents couldn't stand being in the same room and left after 15 minutes because of the noise. It was the only toy he cared about. I couldn't stop laughing when I heard this. Mission accomplished. That was r/Pettyrevenge, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.